Subtropical Gardening Podcast with Paul Plant.
Today on Subtropical Gardening Podcast, we will be focusing on the top 5 Australian native plants for drought-tolerant conditions. There are many reasons why you would be looking for drought-tolerant plants, and obviously climate is one of them and saving water. But why address this issue? I live in the subtropics where we have a very good rainfall and a wet summer and autumn and a dry, right now, winter and spring. But I didn't always live here. I used to live in Brisbane, I used to live in Ipswich and a few other places. And in Ipswich, I learned the hard way. I moved there, turned the irrigation off, and I saw plants die because they were reliant upon irrigation and watering. And I wanted to create a garden that was tough, that was resilient to the conditions it was growing in. I didn't want failure, but I had to learn through that experience what worked and what did not work in that particular condition. And for that reason, I've trialed, I've experimented, I've had failures, I've had successes with a whole range of plants in different situations here in Southeast Queensland. Now, I'll be talking about the top 5 I think are perfect for the subtropics, but wherever you live in Australia or overseas, those top 5 plants will be different depending upon your situation. So it is all about selecting the right plants for your conditions, your soil, your climate. Those things are very, very important. But through my experimentation, I found out which 5 I think are the best for other gardeners to trial and to experiment with. You know, with plants, you do have to decide, do you want more flowers? Do you want to focus on the foliage, the texture? Do you have to consider the soil, which is what I mentioned? There are so many variables, and my top 5 is based on my experimentation through my trials and errors, as I've said, and I'd like to focus on those and bring those to you. But I just want to remind you, at the end of this video, I'll go through gardening tips, how to make a more drought-resistant tolerant garden, selecting plants, and what you can do to encourage success with those particular plants. And I do encourage you, if you do like this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe, because I will be doing these videos every single week for the Subtropical Gardening Podcast, focusing on the subtropics, the tropics, and the warm temperate climates. So my name is Paul Plant, a qualified horticulturist. I've been working in the nursery industry, the landscape industry, the interior plantscape industry. I've been on radio, I've written and had input into magazines and books. So the fact that a lot of information you find online may not be relevant or may be suitable for a different climate zone is very, very important to really grasp and appreciate where you live and the conditions that you have. Now, the thing about drought-tolerant plants is you do have to look at your climate zone. As I said, I am in the subtropics, which means we have a very distinctive wet, humid summer and autumn and a dry winter and spring. In other parts of Australia, the reverse is true. In the USA, where you use the USDA climate zones, you need to be aware of what those conditions are when the dry season is and when to select those plants. In Europe and England, once again, choose the plants best suited to your climate area and also that can tolerate those dry conditions. But I will be talking about some of those tips later on to really highlight and achieve the success with those plants. As they say, let's get stuck into it. The 5 plants that I think that are really, really good for the climate. Some things are getting loose in front of me. I'm just cleaning them up. Now, the first plant, I'm going to be showing you both some real plants and also some videos that I've done from my yard and some gardens around where I live. So the first choice I choose of Australian native tough plants is Lomandra, for a good reason. There are so many on the market and different species, but the one I really want to highlight is Lomandra longifolia. It is the toughest. It can tolerate full sun. It can tolerate drought. It can tolerate a little bit of wet period. But Lomandra longifolia is best adapted to those really harsh conditions. Be aware that in the industry, we also sell Lomandra hystrix, which is incredibly popular and I think a nicer looking plant, but it does prefer a little bit more TLC, which means a bit of dappled light, a bit higher in moisture content. And to show you, the leaves are a lot more weepier and softer and gentle. And then, of course, you've got a lot more other species. Now, the main difference, I suppose, with Lomandra longifolia and Lomandra hystrix, I'm going to see if I can show you this close up. So see how there is the point. There's about 3 points on that one. And modified 3 points. The middle is higher than the outer sides. Where's my face? Put it in front of my face. So that's Lomandra hystrix. It's a really good indicator that there are, where's my face? There's my face. The middle part, which sticks up, the middle point of the leaf is always higher on a Lomandra hystrix, whereas Lomandra longifolia, there are 2 outer points, and then there's like this rough section on the inside. And I was walking around my yard thinking I had a whole lot of Lomandra longifolias, and then I had to check them out. Let's see if I can get this to show you. The tips on these are very fine. Get it closer in front of my face. Very fine little tips. So that does that without the little bumpy section in the middle. So this is Lomandra. Oh, convertifolia. So that's what this particular one is. And my property is full of this, although I was supposed to have longifolia on the property. And as a comparison, this is Lomandra spicata, which is a lot shorter, fatter, broader leaves. And the tip, where is it? The tip is not as obvious. I'm hoping that can be seen. It's more like an angle. And it's a very short plant. Now, Lomandra longifolia will grow to about 1.5 meters. Let's show the video and I'll talk through that. So this is Lomandra longifolia. Where is my button? That is bizarre. There you go. So Lomandra longifolia, it's a nice clumping plant, as you can see. It produces a nice round mound with all of the spikes coming out. Some people find the ends a little bit sharp and pointy. I don't find that as an issue, but it is incredibly tough and resilient. And I have to say, a lot of the industry has accidentally sold Lomandra hystrix as Lomandra longifolia, and hopefully that can be corrected in the future. But look for those leaf tips, as I was talking about, to help you with. I've just got to make sure it doesn't go to the next one. Okay, so remember, Lomandra longifolia does that with a bit of tiny little bits on the middle. And then Lomandra hystrix, I've got to do my fingers very carefully here. Yeah, something like that. Where there's a taller one in the middle and little pointies on the side. Just got to be careful which way my hands go there. The other thing about this one, as I said, is Lomandra longifolia. It is resilient. The councils use it. The landscape designers use it. If you are after a plant for green, tough, resilient to hold the embankment, soil stabilization, you want to plant it, water it in, and don't look after it after that, Lomandra longifolia is definitely the top choice I would have, because it is virtually indestructible. Plus, it has a really good benefit for the native pollinators, the bees. The butterfly caterpillars do use it, and also when it sets seed, some of the birds will eat the seed. So you've got all environmental ticks right there for that particular one plant. The other thing interesting about Lomandra longifolia and most of the Lomandras is that they are dioecious, which means there are separate male and separate female plants. So in order to get the seed for you to propagate them, you need both male and female. And quite often it's very difficult to identify the male and the female until they start to flower. That's very obvious. So do remember that. Lomandra longifolias are native to Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, and South Australia. They are not in Northern Territory and not in Western Australia. So huge range of toughness and climatic variability there, which makes it, for me, number one. Okay, number two on my list is Doryanthes. These are the Gymea lilies and the spear lilies. These are big, bold foliage plants. And these are some I've been propagating from seed, and I'll just show you. This is probably about 2 years old, probably even 3. Unfortunately, my camera focuses on a head, sometimes not on the plant, so I'm going to have to probably buy an additional monitor camera so I can actually focus on these plants. But basically, big, bold foliage, beautiful, tough plants. There are 2 main species, Doryanthes palmeri, which is the main one I like to grow, that is native to Queensland and northern New South Wales. There is then D.excelsa, which is just specific, native to New South Wales. Now, the D.excelsa has, I think, the prettier flower in that it has a straight stem with a flower cluster at the top. It's like a beautiful bouquet. The birds just land on it. It's a wonderful magnet if you want to grow a feature plant for foliage and for its flowers. Doryanthes palmeri, the flower stalk tends to bend a little bit, so it produces more of a bottle brush flower along the stalk at the end. The Gymea is a bit shorter growing, whereas the spear lily, the Doryanthes palmeri, will definitely grow larger, but to me it's a much nicer looking plant. Now let's get into that video. Hopefully I've got it right. Yes. As you can see, this is at my place. Nice strappy green leaves. This is the morning sun coming through, so it's shining on one side, and then the shadow side is on the other. You know, these are really tough plants. These have been in the position just under gum trees for quite a number of years, I would say at least over 10, and they are tough. I do not water them. The leaf fall that falls onto the driveway, I push back up onto around the base of these Gymea lilies, so they are naturally mulched from the surrounding gum trees. They are a really good, tough, hardy architectural plant, and when they flower, beautiful. Now that is actually a mix I've got along there of both Gymea lilies and spear lilies. So that's the Doryanthes palmeri and the Doryanthes excelsa. Excelsa being Gymeas and palmeris being the spear lilies. I know it can get a little bit confusing, but these plants are kind of semi-succulent, if you can think about it in terms of that. The leaves are shaped in such a way that the water is drawn down into the base of the plant. The roots tend to be quite succulent in their texture, and they form a very tough underground structure. So they're very resilient to climate adaptability through the drought period. Their roots will travel down through rocks and find the crevices to source their water. Growing at the base of gum tree, I've found any plant that grows at the base of a gum tree here in Australia is tough, is resilient, and proves its worth as a drought tolerant plant. So definitely worth growing. You can keep these in a pot for a number of years if you want this architectural feature. And as I said, I love them. They really could be used as a pot plant at the front feature for that, rather than an agave, rather than a yucca plant. These are softer, no spikes, which is fantastic. And then when it does eventually flower, you get that attraction of the bees, the butterflies, the pollinators, the whole gamut. Environmentally, again, ticks so many benefits that it is worth growing for that reason. Now, let's move on to number 3. Now, everyone in Australia knows these plants. They are, of course, the Grevilleas. Now, I'm just going to show you some of mine that I've pulled out this morning. Not all of them were in flower, so I've only pulled out a few. So you've got things like orange marmalade and the Grevillea venusta. Unfortunately, my face is becoming the main feature here. Camera's having great difficulty, and I do apologize. Okay, I might bring it back closer to my face. Then you've got ivory, which is more like a bottle brush effect. The flowers on the side. This is a seedling that popped up in my yard, which has a bit of pink in it. has just only started open. Oh, I can't even get that to open. There you go. That's what I need to do. It's only just started to open its flower now, and it hasn't yet produced its full feature. Spinning around. This was Lupilou. It's just starting to open up. And just to explain some of the Grevilleas, a lot of the Grevilleas come from the hybrid of Grevillea Banksii. And the Banksias have more of a spiky leaf. And a lot of people can get rashes from this particular species and the hybrids. So, and I'm one of them, so I tend to avoid getting too close to this particular plant when I prune it. But commonly known as spider flower, the Grevilleas are native to Australia and to a number of other countries, so it's not just endemic to Australia. Please be aware of that. There are ground covers, low shrubs, high shrubs, small trees, large trees. Grevillea is a huge genus with a lot of species and probably one of the more popular cultivars for people who want to grow plants to attract wildlife in your garden. Incredibly diverse, and definitely worth growing. But be aware, some of these Grevilleas are short-lived. You're talking about maybe about 7 years. Some, like Grevillea robusta, which is a tree, will truly live well over 30 years. I have personally found that some of the cultivars are very short-lived based on where specifically they were bred for, being that they may not be suitable for the humid, hot summers that we have. So I've found that things like some of the Dorothy Gordon, for example, likes to keel over after about 7 years. Sandra Gordon is resilient. Honey Gem, resilient. The dwarf ones like Majestic, Robin Gordon, all of those ones, Lupilou, that they have a lifespan, probably less than 10 years, but really good, tough plants, beautiful flowering plants, and I think worth consideration. Again, native plants. Just because a native plant is Australian doesn't mean, it's 100% suitable for all of Australia. We have an incredibly diverse climate here in Australia, everywhere from the inland desert areas to the wet coastal zones, going from the top of the tropics all the way down to very cold temperate areas in Tasmania. So selecting the right species, the right cultivar for your garden is critical. Going online and seeing that a native Grevillea is fine for Australia is just redundantly silly. You need to check which ones are appropriate for your climate. And I do know there's a number of websites that landscape architects and designers refer to, and they're just not suitable for the subtropics and the tropics. So please do your research, home gardeners and landscapers, and choose the right plants. In fact, you're probably better off contacting local nurseries and ask for their advice. Does that particular Grevillea grow in your local area? And they'll be straight up. They'll tell you no or yes. And I think that's probably the best information you'll find to really identify the suitability for your situation. And please remember, ask about your soil. Some of the Grevilleas will not handle heavy clay-based soils that hold water. Others need specific sand. And of course, grafted plants, they, if done correctly, can handle heavy soil, but they're a lot more expensive. But I won't get into grafting. That's a whole new gamut, and they will be more expensive, as I said, but it's a great way to increase your diversity of Grevilleas in your yard. Great for bees, butterflies, and birds. Wonderful environmental plants to consider. There's a lot more other natives that I could throw in this pile, but I'm trying to keep it just to 5, what I think are the most resilient, most drought hardy, and the easiest to acquire. Now comes this one, which may not be that easy to acquire, but I've put it in my top 5 because I have found it incredibly tough and resilient. Now, this is a plant I've propagated from cuttings. Where's its flower? It's there somewhere. This is Goodenia rotundifolia. It's got furry-like leaves, rotund meaning kind of roundish. See if I can bring that flower closer up into little yellow flower. yeah, it's kind of hard getting this into shape. That's about it. So this is a ground cover. When I propagated this, I put it into partial shade to stimulate the roots. I fertilized it. It's growing really, really well. When grown in full sun, it does take on a more kind of much furrier and more kind of, that's it, there you go. It gets a bit of a brown tint to it, and I actually don't mind that color. I think it adds another dimension to the overall garden palette within the garden scape, and it looks more resilient. It looks, that furry texture I think adds another element. So you've got the color, you've got the foliage texture, you've got a little flower. It's wonderful for the bees. So Goodenia rotundifolia is native to just Queensland and New South Wales. It likes the fringe forest areas. So again, really good next to eucalyptus tree and existing vegetation in our bushland. Anything in the bushland is a pretty good example of how tough it is. You might need to resort to going to a specialist native nursery like Landcare or a native specialist nursery, or you could just head to your local garden centre and ask them to get some in. So Goodenia rotundifolia, let's see the little video that I've done up for it. Oh, sorry, I didn't talk about my Grevillea images, sorry about that. So I walked around one of the local botanic gardens and I just took some quick little snapshots of a whole range of different Grevilleas just to show you the diversity that is available, anywhere from the larger shrubs. I think that's Peaches and Creams, one of my favorites, very hard to acquire. If you ever find it, buy it. You've got low plants with really intense colors. You've got, this is a grafted Grevillea, I cannot remember its name. This is one of the weeping ground cover forms grafted onto an upright stem. So you can have a lot of fun with these grafted Grevilleas. Where are some of the others? Another small growing one, more like a tangerine color, as you can see. As I mentioned, Grevilleas are incredibly tough. The color range is beautiful and eye-catching. The bees, there you go, bees on cue, turn up and do drink the nectar from it. So it's a really good bird attractant and wildlife attractant plant. And as I said, the colors, just intense, beautiful, electric pinks and reds and oranges and yellows and creams and whites. Beautiful plants, but be aware, as I said, some people might get rashes or a reaction to the foliage, so choose your plants very, very carefully. And the next video should be, here we go, moving up next to the, very close, a pink. Got to include the pink. And it's like, now this was taken out the Noosa Botanic Gardens. And yes, I think the yellow, from memory, cream was the very last one. Moving on to, there you go, Goodenia rotundifolia. So this is at the front of my place. I've got it scrambling over plants. I've got it scrambling, well, over my boundaries, which is basically I put down logs and sticks, which is a bit of a border to one of my garden beds. It doesn't stop the wallabies and kangaroos jumping right through the whole lot. The flowers are cute, in full bloom. There's a lot of yellows, but this is, July. It's not the best time for flowering, but it just grows really well. That's the color, brilliant. You can see a bit of the tint of the foliage color just on the edge of the leaves. This is a great little plant to consider growing in your garden. And before I get on to my last one on my list, let's go back here. And the last one on my list is basically more like a large shrub, almost to a tree. The councils like to use it as a street tree. It kind of ticks the environmental and the local issues. It is, of course, Banksia integrifolia, the coastal Banksia. Now, this is native to Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. Proven, tested to tolerate a range of soils and conditions, which is why councils like it and developers and landscapers. It is tough. It is resilient. It will grow around about 5 meters or so in some circumstances, but most people prune it down to around about the 3 meter range. You can see it in some areas as a street tree. So they prune all the lower branches to a canopy and then it goes up. But I personally prefer it when it looks more natural with branching from the bottom all the way up. That's how nature intended it to be, and I think that is how it should be. So this plant has some wonderful features. I love this textural, oh, this is going to be very difficult. I need something else. Let's see if I can grab something like this. I love the textural shape of the foliage. I don't know if this is going to show it, probably won't. No, it's not. That's unfortunate. I'll put it right next to my face. That's it. The new growth has this beautiful little copper colored tone to it. The leaves, I think, paltate technically, but with serrated edges. They are silvery white underneath, which gives another wonderful appearance to them. They can be really, really bushy if you prune them heavily. They have a lignotuber underneath, which means during drought conditions and in fire conditions, the top can be burnt off, given also that the trunk itself acts like an insulation, so that it burns the outer bark, and then it allows a lot of the epicormic buds to shoot after the fire, but also it reshoots from the ground. So incredibly drought tolerant, fire resistant, a good plant to use. And then when it flowers, you have all the flowers, bird life, and the bees coming in. I've only got a short little video, mainly because I couldn't find it in full flower. So let's have a look at it. So this is it just after flowering. You can see the old flower heads. At the top were some of the flower cones. The bark can be a little bit, stems a little bit gnarly, but I like the color of the green. I like the silver underneath. And then you've got the little old men's Banksia head flower heads. And from underneath, that's the silver foliage. It is a beautiful plant. It's a resilient plant. It's almost indestructible. It's worth considering. It ticks all the boxes you would ever want for a drought-tolerant plant. And it looks really good. If you give it some extra watering, it will put on more growth and more flowers. So just be aware with drought-tolerant plants, just because it's drought-tolerant doesn't mean it doesn't like water. And there goes my dogs. It still appreciates that little bit of extra TLC. That's my main 5, which is why I do like them. Now let's get into the information of nitty-gritty of care, planting, and increasing the success of your low watering garden, as well as these particular plants. If you have liked the video so far, please remember, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Now, the first thing to talk about is probably, fertilizing and watering when you put them in. Be aware that when you fertilize a plant, it needs moisture in order to take up the nutrients. And therefore, if it's not raining or you're not irrigating, you applying fertilizer has no function at all. So you might as well wait until the wet season starts, or if your plants are irrigated. That said, when you plant a new garden and you are thinking about a drought-tolerant plant, please include things that will increase the carbon content and the moisture holding content within your soil, whether you've got a sandy soil from Western Australia or a loamy soil in Australia on the eastern coast. Your moisture holding capacity of your soil extends the tolerance of your plants to withstand drought. So adding things like compost is critical to hold moisture in your soil. So using old compost is important. Depending upon your plant, if you've got some of the proteaceae plants like the Grevilleas, they do not like high phosphorus, so please avoid adding fertilizer in at the time of fertilizing unless it's specific, a native fertilizer which is low in phosphorus. That's a very, very key important thing. The other thing is staking support might be needed. Don't tie them too hard. Think about mulching, which is critical. It's one of the most important things when you're planning for a drought-tolerant garden. I would recommend, if you can, do a bit of a soil pH test to see if you need to change the pH or buffer the pH to allow a better success with your soil. Ideally, you want to plant into the ground either when the soil is moist, or at least you need to water it very well once it's watered. Now, not just the area where the plant has been potted, but you need to water around the zone so that the plants are encouraged, they're stimulated to send their roots out so that they are better resilient for dry conditions which may be coming. So please be aware of the watering when you water them in. Some people use things like water crystals and water holding elements within the soil. I personally don't. It's my choice. Some people do. So that's a decision you might need to investigate if it is worthwhile doing in your situation. Some of the benefits of drought-tolerant plants, well, basically financial. You don't have to pay for extra water. You don't have to maintain your gardens by going out and watering them. You will be saving time. You will be saving money. You will be creating a garden that is more reliant upon the environment. And if you think about global warming and climate change, you need to think about selecting plants that can handle looking after themselves so that you do not have to go out and be a slave to your garden. You want your plants to be able to look after themselves as much as possible for best success. So they are key things to talk about. You know, saving time for me is the key thing. I choose plants as best I can that are tough, that are resilient. So I do not, I do have acreage. I don't want to go out every single day and water my plants. I will look after my potted plants, but once they're in the ground, they are on their own. And I think that is a bit of an attitude we need and we should probably consider. Now, you've got two options. One is, now please remember, I'm talking purely about native plants today on this video. Create a garden that is full of tropical native plants or native resilient plants that you don't have to maintain. Ideally, go for this choice. The choice is yours, but that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do with this particular YouTube video today. What other benefits can I talk about? Basically, a drought-tolerant plant is not void of wildlife. A drought-tolerant plant will, a drought-tolerant garden will bring wildlife into your garden because you've invested the time and you've selected plants that are resilient, that don't need high maintenance, but will still flower, that will encourage what you will become a habitat haven for wildlife. And that, I think, is definitely a bonus and a goal that most gardeners should aim for. Choosing biodiversity, choosing diversity of plant species. Whether or not you choose just native endemic species, your choice. I actually think because of climate change, endemic species is not a good way to go because you need to plan for the future. And if you just choose plants that are local to your area, climate's going to change. They'll die. And if they can't adapt fast enough, they will collapse. You need to plan ahead. Think about other more resilient plants from tougher resilient areas and start using those in your garden. So in conclusion, my top 5 Australian resilient plants for a drought-tolerant garden. I've got the Lomandras, I've got the Grevilleas, I've got the Doryanthes, the spear lilies and Gymea lilies. I've got the Banksia and the Goodenia rotundifolia. So they're my 5 I've chosen today for gardeners of Australia and gardeners overseas who want to check out my top 5. Now you may choose different plants. I'd like to hear from you in your comments. Yes, I could have included wattles. I could have included so many more plants, but I've chosen these 5 based on my experience, my climate, and the capacity to source these from suppliers, whether they're retail garden centers or specialist native nurseries. Yes, you will have different plants on your list, and I would love to hear of your list. Also be aware I will be doing a follow-up video of my top 5 drought-tolerant non-native plants in the near future. So stay tuned to that. And the best way to do that is give me a thumbs up, click the bell if there's a bell there for subscription, and subscribe. That would be a great way. If you do have comments, as I said, please leave it. I would love to hear from you. That's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed Subtropical Gardening Podcast. I do this every single week, usually release it on a Saturday or a Sunday. My name is Paul Plant and a qualified horticulturist. And yes, the name is real. I was born with it. And happy gardening to everyone. And I do hope you trial some of these plants in your garden if you have not already. Thank you for joining in and participating on this video.